Welcome to Vermont Music Show, a place where Vermont musicians talk about Vermont music and their musicianship and tell the stories of how they got here and where they're going. Hosted by myself, Will Andrews, a.k.a. Wolverine, and...
Art Daily, Videla.
In this week's episode, we'll be talking with singer, producer, songwriter, and artist Lily Traviato. Is that right pronunciation?
Yeah, my full first name is Lillian, but I go by Lily.
Lillian, awesome. AKA Princess Nostalgia. So I first saw Princess Nostalgia play at the Grand Point North Festival a few years ago and was instantly blown away by the bass. I put in a little reminder to check out more of her tunes, and when I got the chance, I uncovered an artist who sounds completely in control of their musical world. It's easy to describe Princess Nostalgia's music as R&B or pop funk, but I think her music is more about the sound design and approach than being typecast as a certain genre. To my ears, her music sounds like one person is making all the creative decisions, which can seem daunting, but ultimately gives the artist the most creative freedom. With all the cooks out of the kitchen, Princess Nostalgia has created a cohesive blend of tones and layers, colors and feelings, and of course, a healthy dose of nostalgia. Pumped to be talking with you today. Princess Nostalgia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a top-notch description. I feel very understood. I appreciate that.
You know, Mark, just like reading through all the stuff about you and listening to your music, Mark and I are both like this solo kind of performers and understand how awesome it is and how much of a joy it is to be in complete control of all this stuff. I
need the control.
I know.
Yes, I definitely have some OCD. I haven't been diagnosed, but I feel like I'm probably at least a little bit OCD.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Probably all three of us.
Yeah, I mean, music production is a great outlet for that.
Right. I mean, as we're talking about it, let's dive into a little bit of that sort of stuff. So, as from what I've gathered from reading through all your interviews, listening to your music, checking it out, you're this kind of one piece, like controlled, this is the deal, I'm in charge of it all. Is that by design? Is that just who you are? Is that like, why do you gravitate towards running it all?
Yeah, well, it's funny because one of my earliest nicknames as a toddler was CEO, because I'm actually working on this in therapy. I've always had like a chip on my shoulder and something to prove to the world. And, but I also just really enjoy being in control of everything. But, you know, it also has to do with being a woman and being consistently underestimated. I do not want to let anyone else, especially a man, and there's exception to this, definitely, but I feel like until I've actually proven what I can do on my own, I don't want to just collaborate with someone who's going to do the work for me. Like, the only way that I can actually learn is by just wading through the dark myself and becoming, you know, fully literate, and especially with music production things. I did not want to hand that over to anyone else. And also because I just really love it and I'm interested in it. And yeah.
How'd you get started? How'd you get started with music production, especially?
Well, I'll start from the beginning. My first instrument that I really played was the double bass in a classical orchestra that I started in 4th grade, and I played for 10 years. And for 5 of those years, I also played electric bass in the jazz band. That sounds cooler than it was, but we did do like covers of Earth, Wind, Fire and stuff, so it's fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So that gave me, I feel like playing the bass for that long in an orchestra gave me a pretty intuitive understanding of how arrangements work, especially since the bass plays kind of like I don't know, I wouldn't say it's counterintuitive, but it's also really, the bass is really intuitive at the same time, but it kind of counterbalances the melody. So I feel like being in the back and playing that part, made composing come pretty naturally to me. And around the age, a little bit later, like maybe around the age of 12, like in middle school, I started making just like funny I discovered iMovie and started making like videos with my neighbors. We had a YouTube channel, and in like a fit of embarrassment when I was a little older, I like made the entire channel private because the videos are so weird. And then I forgot the password, and I've been trying to get back into that account for years. Like, it would just bring me so much joy. like we just had basically made music videos.
Yeah.
And so then I discovered GarageBand. It was just making like loops and recording vocals to go with these music videos. And like one, for example, we dressed up as mosquitoes and like with long pieces of paper, we like created the like singers and we're like rapping about being mosquitoes and just things like that.
I want to see that. That sounds amazing.
There's one
what
video.
was the channel's name? Did you guys have like a name you went by, or like?
Yeah, it was called Beach Avenue Girls, I believe.
Love it.
Because that was the street that we were on. Yeah, and there's one channel that's still public that we posted on my mom's through my mom's YouTube account, which is why it's still there. It's called Sitting by the Fire, and it's a rap song of us sitting by a fire in the wintertime and rapping about being warm and cozy. Yeah, so anyway,
that's amazing.
That is what started me producing music, and I still produce all my videos, but I think the main thing that I've really realized I love doing was writing and producing songs. And eventually I switched to Logic Pro X in high school and was just like blown away by how powerful it was and how many more like infinite opportunities were on there. And it was a smooth transition from GarageBand since they're just aesthetically the same.
Both
I learned everything
Apple
I know.
products.
Yeah. Yeah. But I learned everything I know just through a bunch of trial and error and a lot of YouTube tutorials.
It's rad.
What would we do without YouTube tutorials? Yeah. Just like with like woodworking, like home why can't I think of the term, but just like fixing shit, but also music stuff. Like if you want to learn how to play a song, chances are you can just YouTube it and watch how it happens. I mean, it's pretty nice. It's pretty
amazing. Yeah.
What did we do before that?
I know. It's a good question. It's definitely, I guess there's pros and cons to it, right? Because it's definitely like given almost everyone equal access to a lot of information, but it also means that there's so many people doing it. It's like overwhelmed. It's just this amount of saturation of stuff on the internet. It's just like you feel like a tiny speck. But
I was going to say, feel very small.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could say that about so many things. Like there's so many artists out there, and computers are awesome for making music. It makes it so easy, but just like you said, it means there's just so many people trying to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can feel hard to like break free of that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially since COVID hit, I feel like everyone's had some kind of everyone's had to kind of like question their identity and who they are outside of their public persona, and stepping away from that, and just I've really adjusted my expectations, because to kind of base my idea of success in how many people I reach and how popular I get is just like a path to misery. Like even if I were to be so lucky, I would probably still be miserable. And in fact, I think having that like huge type of fame sounds terrible. Like I'm pretty introverted, so it's like I feel like the only way that I'll be able to have long-term happiness is just focus on the fact that I really enjoy the process. Although it would be nice to be able to make enough money to not have to have another job.
I mean, you nailed it right there. that's
I was going to say the same thing. That was such a good soundbite right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Mark and I, Mark's like, I'm speaking for you here, but the process is for us like my favorite thing. Like we've talked about it before as this sort of like addiction to writing and recording and finding something and like being super interested in sound and all that sort of stuff. So if someone was to watch you from like a bird's eye view, like writing and producing a song from scratch, like what would that look like?
They all kind of form differently, but still within the same context, I guess. It's all on my computer. I haven't really played the bass in years, and I kind of miss being in an orchestra, but it's all just in Logic. I'll start with like a little loop, maybe a bass line, maybe a vocal idea. I have a lot of I feel like a lot of people do this in my voice memos. I have a lot of like little riffs that I come up with. So I feel like the most fun part that comes together the quickest is that first seed of a song that might be like one measure of a loop.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that groove going and I build all the basic parts that I want to be there. And then, you know, dragging that out to a full song with a structure that's the hard part that takes anywhere. Sometimes they just fall together and sometimes it takes over a year, and sometimes it'll take a year to do it or less, and then I'll revisit it year later and want to tweak the entire thing, which I'm doing now. I'm like remixing a lot of old songs now that I know more since my first work that I put out. But yeah, it's basically just like a lot of like OCD, like staring at a screen with my headphones on and tweaking things and going through every single sound in my library one by one. And you know, I figured out what my favorite basic plugins are. And yeah, so it's really just a lot of time like staring at a screen. I don't need glasses, but I finally got these blue light blocking glasses because it just hurts my head so much. And especially since all my visual art is also digital in Photoshop. Okay. I'm just like a computer-based artist. And yeah, pros and cons. It's good for OCD because you have this really precise control over things, but it's really catching up to I just feel all this pressure, especially since COVID. I just feel all this pressure. Like when COVID first hit, one of my eyes twitched for like 2 months straight on and off. And then I got the glasses and quit drinking coffee, and then it finally went away.
I've had a really bad right eye twitch. Now that you say that, and I think I was like, is it coffee? Is it sleep? But now you're bringing to my attention, it could be like staring at a screen too.
I mean, I would think that it's probably the 8-week-old baby that's living in your house, and the fact that you're like dealing with that.
Yeah, that little thing.
Could be that too.
What's the so like sound library stuff? Have you just accrued a whole bunch of sample packs, stuff like that? Do you create your own? Do you like what's that sort of sound library look like for you?
A lot of my stuff is all the stuff that's just in the Logic library. Like even that is so overwhelming. And but I also use a website called freesound.org. Mm-hmm. And you can just find anything you can do. One time I was on there and you can just shuffle and something random will come up. And I was born in Rome, Italy, but like in the summer we go to southern Italy. And one of the first sound that came up the first time I used it was from a tiny town that we used to go to every summer, and it was just the ambient sounds of like the town square. And I just texted my dad like, that's absurd. Like, so it's just cool. Yeah, you can find all kinds of random audio bites, and I'll sample like cicadas chirping to like evil demonic laughs to add, or wind, or all kinds of things to add texture to the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what song you're talking about with the laugh. One of your songs starts with that laugh. Mm-hmm. I love that. Freesound.org, you said?
Yeah, freesound.org.
Sweet. Mm-hmm. That's so crazy, the thing about your like birth town where you're like, this is fate. I must use something from this site.
Yeah, it was really, it didn't even surprise me. Those types of things happen a lot if you're looking out for them.
You mentioned plugins and stuff like that. Like what's your go-to stuff? Are you like big plugin heavy? Do you try to get the sound kind of perfect before you start processing it? Like what's that like for you?
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been learning is that I feel like the best way to go is to find the perfect sound instead of endlessly trying to tweak something that's just not going to work. But my favorite plugins are pretty basic. It's, distortion is one of my favorite things. And I recently got a new distortion plugin called Berserk Distortion. And I got like Kramer tape because I read that that's what Dr. Dre uses to give things a punch. So I do a lot of research, and but only recently have I gotten into buying my own plugin. It's like Grallian is like a auto-tune vocal plugin that I use for my latest album that I really like. You can add like robotic kind of like a robotic texture to the vocals, which I really like. But for the most part, I use a lot of the basic plugins. I kind of like my philosophy so far has been that it's almost paralyzing how many options there are, and sometimes limitations actually help creativity. And only once you've even mastered the stuff that's already on Logic, I think, or will you even be ready to? Same thing with gear. It's like my microphone, I just went to the music store and was like, what's the cheapest thing that will still do a good job? You know, like a lot of times people will ask me, what's the best, what mic should I get? I'm like, I don't even know what this microphone is called. Like, it does the job. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's easy to overthink those things. And once you've finally kind of situated yourself within the context of all the basic elements, then you can actually have have the knowledge necessary to actually make informed decisions about in what ways do you want to upgrade. So one of the best pieces of advice I got from a YouTube tutorial with a music producer was every single step that you do, whether it's like a plugin or I don't know, any single thing that you do, you have to have a clear intention of why you're doing it.
Yeah.
There's no actually like objective rules about production. It's all pretty subjective, but as long as each thing that you add, you know what you're attempting to do there. So you could get the most expensive mic, but if you don't really know why it's better than the basic thing, then I don't know what the benefit is.
Dang, well put. Yeah, I mean, I try to like you said, I try to learn something before I add something else. I think that whether it's in Ableton or Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, there's so much built into those DAWs that it's like you can't even learn it all from the built-in synths or the whatever. So if I'm adding something, I try to spend a bunch of time kind of learning it so you can kind of add it and you know exactly what it's going to do for you. Instead of like you mentioned, aimlessly filtering through something or whatever, finding this plugin. It's like when you learn it, you can kind of just be like, I know this is a perfect distortion and I know exactly how I want to turn the fuzz up or turn whatever. You can use it as like part of your toolkit instead of like just messing around with it. Sometimes I like to just fuck around with shit too. You know, that's just
that's what you have to. I was gonna say, like, you know, I have to qualify what I said with the only way to learn is by just aimlessly piling stuff on and figuring out what it does and how it sounds, for sure. But I feel like the sign that you've made progress is when you actually might be doing less, but knowing exactly why you're doing each thing.
Your synth sounds in all of your stuff it sounds like they were created by the same person, which is a really, really great thing, I think, as an artist, to be able to kind of have your own sort of specific like style of synth or style of sound or whatever. So like, what's your inspiration for a lot of that synth stuff? Is that just you love what you hear? Are you trying to make it sound like something else, or is it all kind of just your own vibe?
Yeah, it's definitely just what sounds I love as soon as I hear them, what sounds like move me, but also like one of my foundational kind of influences is Kraftwerk, and they made all their sounds from scratch, and their sounds are just like, I don't know, primal and simple, and they're just so well produced. So I don't know, I would say they're a huge influence. Another huge influence is Missy Elliott. Like, I love her so much, but generally, and James Blake, I love the stuff that he's doing, the types of things that he's drawing from are the same things that I'm drawing from, I would say. Not to compare myself to him, he's next level, but I feel like I have the same influences as him a lot, but his stuff's more moody and dark. My stuff's more like, I want you to dance to it for the most part.
Funky.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am obsessed with James Blake.
So good.
His voice, but also, like all the tones he uses, he's just like, you can tell he's just so knowledgeable in what he's doing, and he's even just like produced for so many badass artists too. He's just I envy that guy so much.
I know. Yeah. Yep.
And he's British, so like even his talking. Jamil. What's that?
And he's dating Jamila Jamil, so that's pretty enviable.
Yeah, he's
got a British accent, so like even when he talks, he sounds hot. You know, like
he's got it all.
He also, my favorite thing with him is some of his songs are just him and piano, and he can make that sound unique as well.
Yeah.
So anyone,
you can tell. Sorry, go Will.
No, I was just saying any artist that can make a piano sound unique is just like, I mean, it's the same instrument, and the best 20 piano players can sit down at the same piano and all have a different approach or a different sort of sound to it. And some of his stuff is just so basic. You look at the chord progression and you're like, wow, why didn't I fucking think of that? But he just nails it, kills it. The mixing, the mastering, everything is just so perfect. But everything's so simple. You know, like I do like happy James Blake now that like he's in love, so he can write like a love song. But depressed, like everything sucks. James Blake is awesome too. You know.
Yeah. Even when he's happy, he sounds depressed.
I know.
It's like still melancholy happiness.
Yeah.
But yeah. Also, I don't know if I just discovered this new band it's one of the most exciting new bands that I've heard, and they're called Sad Night Dynamite, and they're British, and y'all should check it out. Their stuff they're recent. They have I'll email you with some links to their most recent videos, but their production is everything that. Like, I just listened to it and was just immediately so jealous and blown away.
What was it?
And they only have like 9,000 followers on Instagram, so I'm rooting for them to just blow up.
Sad Night Dynamite. That's got a nice ring to it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of followers, I'm sure you guys feel this way about certain people you know, and you're just like so frustrated why they aren't more well known. And I was looking at all your stuff, Lily, and you're one of those people for me. I'm like, why the fuck? Like, you're so talented with everything. I always loved your music, but then I just discovered the comedy stuff you do. I really love, which I want to get into at some point. But and the artistic stuff too. I'm just like, why don't more people know about Lily? Like, what the hell is going on here? What's wrong with the world?
Yeah. I deleted my Instagram in October because I was just like having an existential crisis about it. Like, I've definitely had a lot of shame around it and feeling like, and it kind of ties into the whole solo performer thing and also being a woman, but it's very hard to separate Instagram and using it for professional purposes with using it for personal validation to fill the hole in your heart. You know, that's how it's designed. So I just felt like that boundary was way too blurry, and I just like had this intent. And then I watched the documentary called Social Dilemma, which it wasn't really anything that I didn't already know, but it had this compounding effect of seeing it all together. And I literally paused it halfway through and deleted my Instagram.
Oh, no.
And now I'm like, it was nice to have like a 4-month break, but then I just felt pathetic, like crawling back. Hey guys, I'm back. And I posted one of those like posts being like, I'm quitting social media. Like, you should do it too. And then like 4 months later, I was like, hey guys, I'm back. But I was coming out with a song and I was trying to just use my mailing list, but like, oh, the numbers were depressing. I have like 100 people on my mailing list, and out of those 100, maybe 20 or 30 would open the email, and out of those 20 or 30, maybe 3 or 4 would even click on the link. So I was just like, this is a necessary tool. And so now I'm just building my Instagram back up, but I only have like 300 followers. And my followers before were still minuscule in the grand scheme of things. I had like almost 2,000, but now I'm like, oh, I should have just kept it and just deleted the actual app and not gone on it for 4 months. But I feel like it was still a symbolic gesture. I'm glad I did it because it's like, all right, cool. This is a good test for my ego where I still have faith in what I'm doing, even though when people look at my account, they'll be like, who's this? Like, and a lot of people who used to follow me, like, this is so like salty, but people who used to follow me haven't followed me back. I'm like, is it because I don't have enough followers to be cool enough now? Like, whatever. It was kind of like weeding out. Now I'm starting from scratch, and I'll just only follow me if you're here for the art and the music, you know?
It's just such a weird thing. And like, we're all musicians, and therein lies the dilemma. Like, I'm pretty sure all of us would rather just play music and make art, but then there's that whole other business, social media side of things and promoting yourself that can just be, that's a job in itself, you know? Like, it's a hard, it's hard to toe the line or like find the right balance between, like, do you sounds like you've had trouble with that, or I mean, do we all? Like, you know?
Definitely. I just like, it's a lot of pressure, and there's so many layers and projections. Like, I feel like social media is just a projection, and I feel like it's really just a conversation that we're all having with ourselves. And yeah, and it's with a layer of being a woman and stuff. Like, I felt a lot of shame of caring about my appearance, and like, you know, even now I kind of want to start a thing. Like, if I post a selfie where I think I look cute, I have to post like another picture in the same reel where I look really bad, because I just feel like a liar. Because for every photo that's from a good angle with good lighting, there's like 20 that I would not want the world to see. And so it just made me like, now that I have Instagram again, the kind of compulsion to post selfies is still there, but I'm really, now that I deleted it, I'm really like, okay, I can't just go back to my old ways. Like, I still do it sometimes, but I'm just like, I have to, like, I just really have to think clearly about why I'm doing this. And part of me is like, well, maybe I just shouldn't feel ashamed at all. But at the same time, like, I don't know, the shame is still there. And every time I post, it's like, every time I post a selfie, it's like, you know, a day of instant gratification. And then looking back, it's just shame. It's just like feeling shallow and stupid.
Yeah. I mean, that's social media in a nutshell. And like Mark said, I can't fucking do everything. And like, I'm really impressed with people like yourself who can kind of do social media stuff well, art, comedy, music, all that sort of stuff. It's like, it's a skill. And you know, there's like a couple of my friends are like social media content managers. There's like entire professions dedicated to doing this well and figuring out how to work the algorithm correctly and kind of aim yourself in the right direction. It's just like a whole new world. Like, all I want to do is tune snares and bass drums and sit and tweak knobs on all these little fucking things I have here. That's all I want to do, but no one's going to know about it unless you share it. And it's just such a hard thing to do.
Fucking algorithm, man.
I know. It's just depressing, because like, posting a selfie will get 200-300% more action than a piece of art or a song.
Right.
Really? Is that like a fact out there?
Yeah.
I just made up the percentage, but yeah, it's
I believe you.
Yeah.
It's all about like the face. It's like showing your face or having that straight up. Like, that's what brings it in. Man. But hey, you mentioned a little bit about performing, solo performing. That's something that I've done in the past. Mark, you've done some solo stuff too. Like, I think it's extremely difficult. What's your like feeling about solo performances? Like, do you love it? Is that what you would like? Would you ever like to have a backing band? Like, what's your feeling on that?
I would love to have a full band one day. I think that would have more impact for sure. At the same time, as an introvert, like, the idea of having to manage and being so OCD, it's like, I want people who are so excited about my music, who still have something to offer that I can't offer, but who are still like, I want to be in full control. And so the idea of being in a band with like my friends or people who I know just really stresses me out socially. Like, I just feel like I'll be an asshole, because I'm like, you have to do everything my way.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to, you know, I feel like one day, once I've proven myself, I will feel like I can and have the income and have the kind of foundation there to work with professionals who are actually there to play my music. Then yeah, but for now, I'm still just building up my own name enough so that I can have that type of authority in the future. And it's also nice not to have to split my money with anyone when I perform. Yep. I just show up with my backpack, with my computer and some cables, and then I leave with a pocket full of cash. It's just easy, you know, like, but one day the goal is definitely to work with a band and to pay them what they deserve to be paid, for sure, once I'm making enough money to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It really is a drag having to lug so much gear, and like, it's just, that rings so true to me. It's just the show, like, not having to split the money and just having one thing to bring. It's so convenient. What about, so you released this new single fairly recently, Ugly Lovely, right?
Mm-hmm.
I listened to it. I love it.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear about what it seems to me like that you kind of like disparity or dichotomies, like ugly, lovely. It's like you have an ugly side, you have a lovely side, and then that kind of seeps into your performance-based stuff. Like you wear different outfits, which I can really relate to. I love dressing up into different shit.
Yeah.
And like wigs. Like, talk to us about how much is it like persona, or like is that really you? Like, do you transform when you perform to a different person, or like talk to us about dichotomies and maybe like about that single and all that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. My dad made the same observation. He was like, a lot of your lyrics deal with opposites. Yeah, I guess I think opposites are interesting because the whole nature of being human is that we have to deal with the dichotomy of being both like spirit and flesh, and knowing that binaries at a deeper level and binaries don't exist, but also knowing that they do exist on the material level, and holding both of those things in your consciousness at the same time. I was a philosophy major in college, so and I found it really annoying, to be honest. Like I wrote a philosophy thesis, and despite like I almost love to hate the medium because philosophers are like obsessed with having zero contradictions. You can't contradict yourself. But to me, like reality is full of contradictions, and an idea can hold a bunch of contradictions within it and still be true to me. So I found it kind of like a limiting form, but I still think learning it helped me to be able to critique it in a legitimate way. And a lot of my lyrics are inspired by those ideas. Like one of my favorite songs is Gestalt Switch, which is the one that has the evil laugh in the beginning. And that's the term that basically describes the subjective experience of a paradigm shift. So it's like if you're looking at an optical illusion and you suddenly see the part that was previously hidden to you, then your consciousness suddenly changes and you can never go back to the way it was before. Gestalt Switch and Ugly Lovely, a lot of my songs are about that type of. My friend Sophia told me, calls it the heroine's journey. And that's not her term, but a lot of literature focuses on the hero's journey, like, you know, Homer stuff, that the Iliad, where it's like, okay, we're going onto this linear path towards this already identified goal. Whereas the heroine's journey is the more chaotic feminine energy of these kind of forces almost outside of you, but maybe that are part of your unconscious, just suddenly pull you under, like the story of Persephone's being kidnapped into the underworld. And you kind of have to like figure out how to what you can learn from that and embrace all of the darkness. So like I've been learning a lot about shadow work, about integrating confusion and darkness instead of just casting it out, and embracing chaos instead of fighting it. So Ugly Lovely is about that. So is Gestalt Switch. So is Love Me Long Time. So is, I don't know, I feel like a lot of my songs are about the same thing, but from different angles. And Ugly Lovely specifically is especially about doing shadow work. And, you know, I feel like the reason I deleted social media was because all these feelings got so overwhelming of me not accepting like certain parts of myself that I'm ashamed of. And that song is about like the only way to actually transcend those things about myself that I don't like is to actually like fully accept them instead of trying to deny that they exist. And also carrying the awareness that anytime someone else is pissing me off, or any anger I've had at the people who have hurt me the most in my life, it's really because they're reflections of something in myself that I really, really, really would rather not see.
That's really cool. And I can totally relate. I'm really fascinated by dichotomies too. And just, I've always been, the last few years, and it comes out in music similar to what you're saying. I've been trying to figure out in me, there's like the really reclusive kind of like hermit guy who likes to just hole up and create. But then when I do go out and socialize, I'm kind of like Leo Rising, where I'm like want to be.
I'm a Leo Rising too.
Really nice. Like want to make people laugh, or like the entertainment side of me. So I'm trying to figure out. I feel like there's two very different parts of me, and you say that about everyone, but it's like, how do you? I don't know. It's just interesting to kind of dive into, or like understand and embrace both sides, and maybe still view yourself as the same like it's all coming from the same place, even though the two sides could be super different. I don't know. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I relate to that, and that kind of ties back to another part of your question that I didn't address, which was like, which part is like my persona and the stage character, and which part is me. Like they all feel, it's all me, but I'm definitely trying to create more boundaries around what's Princess Nostalgia and what's Lily Traviato. But I relate to what you said. Like I'm mostly an introverted person who likes to just be in my room, like working on stuff. But the smaller percentage of time that I am with people, like I'm always cracking jokes. Like a part of me loves to be the center of attention, obviously, which is the Leo Rising. Like on stage, I love it. And but it is also a lot of pressure. Back to your earlier question, Will, about being a solo performer, where it's like, it's a lot of pressure to feel like you're, especially when I'm not playing an instrument, like it feels like I'm just dancing for people, and I want to be dancing with people. So that depends on the environment too. Like if it's dimly lit and everyone is dancing and like a little bit loose, then it's fun. But the times I've performed in like broad daylight for a seated audience, I feel really just awkward, and I usually just look at the ceiling and don't look at anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that. I think one thing that I've noticed, both of you guys, Leo Rising, but also both of you very interested in comedy as well. And I think that there's this sort of like connection between musicians and comedians. If you think about art as a whole, artists, actors, musicians, whatever, I think comedians and musicians are the closest of all those groups, whether it's a solo performance or whatever. You know, it's also that every comedian thinks they can play an instrument and every musician thinks they're funny. I think that's kind of like the combination there. But like, do you want to talk a little bit about that, Lily, about like the connection between comedy and performance and that stuff? Like Mark's been really interested in sketch comedy and like stand up and stuff like that. And it seems like that's something you're really interested in as well.
Yeah, I've always loved comedy, but especially in the past like 3 months, I've gone down a comedy rabbit hole. Like I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. There's one called Good One where like they have a comedian on and they tell their favorite joke and then they dissect it and how they wrote it. And then Mike Birbiglia has a podcast called Working It Out where he like works out jokes with other guests. I just finished reading Steve Martin's autobiography, Born Standing Up.
Yep.
And he was also a musician, you know, he's a musician, so that relates to that. But I don't know, I just love stand-up and I like sketch comedy too. Like I guess that does trace back to how I started making music too, because my entire YouTube, like 12-year-old YouTube channel was like sketch comedy basically. It's interesting relating it to music. I haven't really thought about that before. All I know is that like comedy is one of my favorite ways to process things, like, and I've only recently been like, I want to try it myself, so I've just started writing things down when I think about them. And I sent my dad one of the videos and he just responded, "People think that's funny."
You don't get it, Dad.
Yeah, what struck me about your comedy was, and I think you even like said something along these lines in one of the captions, was that like you're doing it for yourself and you're like cracking yourself up. So to me, it felt really genuine. And that's like similar to being a musician. Like you're doing it you want to ultimately be doing it for yourself before you're thinking about the outside forces or whatever. But can I quickly run down some of my favorite things that I found?
Yeah.
With your comedy that really cracked me up.
Please do.
The men in the parallel parking thing, like that, I feel like that is such a thing.
what is it about cis men and their almost dog-like ability to sniff out anytime a woman nearby is parallel parking? It's like, you start to back up, and they're like, what? They gotta walk over and sadistically watch you do it in order to feel virile or something.
I even feel the pressure when I start to go parallel parking. But like, yeah, what is it about like
Don't even get me started.
Like hetero men being like, oh, like, oh, are they gonna do? Is she gonna do it? Like, you know, that was really funny.
It's happened so many. One time, I grew up in the city. Like, grew up in Italy, but then moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and lived like I could see the Steelers stadium from my street. So, like, I'm good at parallel parking. And this guy in front of me failed to parallel park in front of my house, gave up. Then I started doing it successfully, but he parked real quick, got out of his car, ran in front of me, and started guiding me. I was like, let me have my moment, because I was excited to show that I could do it after he failed. He just couldn't let me have that victory.
So funny.
And there was another part of the joke that I wanted to add on. That's like, what? Every time a woman hits reverse, do we start excreting some type of like pheromone that like signals to them?
Oh, a woman's backing up. We gotta watch. That one was hilarious. And then this one I really related to is me when a UVM student thinks liking the Grateful Dead is a personality. Because I've met so many people who bring up the Grateful Dead too much, or like you reference it in like a real life setting, and I'm just like, oh, please just no, don't do that. That's not original. Like, don't stop.
They have like the whole outfit going on, like it's all tie-dye and like, yeah. My mom had an ex-boyfriend. He was more of a fish head than he was actually my guitar teacher, which is how they met. He ended up living with us for like a couple years, but he was a really nice guy, but he was the first of that type that I had been exposed to when I was like maybe 12.
I like the Grateful Dead's music, but the fact that it's lived on for so long and there's so many like original artists and original music that's getting like swept under the rug because of this like hippie Grateful Dead culture, it just really pisses me off. And I'm bummed because I like some of the music, but there's just all the like tribute bands. It's just like, I can't stand it.
It's more of like a social phenomenon than it is about the music. I don't know. I've never been a huge fan. The one song I've always liked was like a song they made in the 80s, Althea, because it's funky. Mm-hmm. But all the other stuff, I've just never been too into the whole jam band stuff. I like the Fish song, Bouncing Around the Room. Those were the two. Bouncing Around the Room and Althea are my two jam band songs that I like.
And which is funny because Bouncing Around the Room, the Fish fans, is probably like one of their most commercial, like straight ahead tunes. Yeah. Like it's not like a deep jammy cut.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I feel like I get annoyed when people are like, pop isn't cool, man. Like, stuff that's more poppy is like hard to do. It's hard to make something that's catchy. And there's a lot of really bad pop, don't get me wrong. But to do good pop, like, I know Michael Jackson is canceled now, but I still listen to Off the Wall for Quincy. Like, are you going to tell me that pop isn't good? Like, anyway, yeah, I feel like that's one of the poppiest Fish song, and that's probably why I like it.
Yeah. We should move on, but I want to do one more because I also love making fun of this stuff. The one, me when a room full of fellow white people collectively says namaste without realizing that modern yoga is equally, if not more, influenced by Western capitalist gymnastic culture than it is by ancient Indian philosophy.
Yeah.
That one was good.
Yeah. I feel like an asshole because that's so pretentious, but like, it's true. And
no,
I'm self-deprecating too because I've been in that room, you know.
Yeah, and this kind of goes with the kind of the Instagram culture too. There's so many like, I don't know. It's really hard to not make fun of all the white people out there with the like. And this is my nighttime skincare routine, and like they have tons of fucking followers, and they're just those like kind of health. Yoga, really nice bodies, those types of people who are maybe taking themselves way too seriously.
Yeah, and there's a dark side to that world too, where like the weird thing about a lot of spiritual truths is they have so many levels of meaning that they can actually be used to, like in cults, they can be used to actually exploit people. And, you know, I've met people like that in Burlington that are like, and it's a special breed of male too, or of men. Male sounds kind of cold, but it's a certain type of like cis men who present themselves as being like spiritual, but actually they're like extremely toxic, and it's like a total mindfuck. Like, yeah.
Are those types of people hard to identify, or is it pretty quick where you're like, oh, you're full of shit?
I think I've gotten better. At it. Yeah, but I've definitely fallen for that facade more than once. But I'm now like really working on identifying the red flags, and so, knock on wood, I'll be able to notice in the future. But it's definitely dark. Like it's the same. It's like this guru complex, you know.
Yeah, that like quarter life crisis one was really funny to me as well.
I think it's kind of presumptuous when people talk about their quarter life crisis or their midlife crisis. Like, bitch, you could die tomorrow. This could be your 3/4 life crisis. Heck, it could be your 4/5 life crisis or your 5/6 life crisis. God damn it!
Because like right at the end of it, you kind of almost like laugh at the joke, and that night I was really like, oh, she's just so genuine with this. She's just having fun, trying shit out. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I would just record them and then watch them like multiple times and just really laugh at the videos. I told my dad that one too, and he goes, "That's not funny. That's just depressing."
Bitch, you might die tomorrow. Maybe it's a 5/6 life crisis, or
exactly
7/8 life crisis.
He didn't think it was funny, but then he just started telling me a Rodney Dangerfield joke instead, and I'm like, all right, whatever.
Age disparity right there.
Yep. Yeah, the one that he told me, he was like, "Oh, really good Rodney Dangerfield joke. My wife likes to talk to me during sex. She called me from a motel the other night."
Yeah, there you go.
I'm like, okay, good one. I mean, he was funny, but it's just that was a funny interaction.
Let's go through some quick questions for you.
Okay.
Why is nostalgia such a powerful songwriting tool?
Yeah, I guess it's one of the most complex emotions, I would say. And for me, it was just powerful from growing up in Rome, which is like this already ancient, extremely emotive place, and then moving to the States with my mom when I was 8. And it was an unexpected move. My family kind of got like torn apart, and my brother and I didn't really know what was happening until we'd been in America for 6 months already. So it's kind of like a traumatic upheaval. And then my dad stayed in Italy, so going back there around once a year, which is a good deal because he still pays for my flights to go visit him. So
perfect.
Great. But returning to a place like Rome, having all these childhood memories and feeling like torn away from them just compounds the feeling of nostalgia. So yeah, I just think it has so many layers to it.
Awesome. What's the favorite lyric that you've written?
I would say there's 2 like kind of verses that are my favorite. In Ugly Lovely, I really like the verse that's stop and go like a satellite, or no, stop and go like a flashlight, come and go like a satellite, yes and no like my appetite, fast and slow like my days and nights. So I just loved how that flowed, and that was really playing with all the opposites. And then in Gestalt Switch, I really like just the opening lines. I can't tell the sky from the sea. I can't make out the line in the space between A and B. Yeah, those are a couple that I like.
Awesome.
Sweet.
What's a song that you wish you had written?
I mean, anything by Missy Elliott. And then James Blake, my favorite song, but for some reason I'm blanking on the name of it right now. I'm looking it up. Life Round Here by James Blake. But that feels arbitrary. There's so many I could list. I don't know.
Which record is that off of, that James Blake song?
It is off of. Oh, started playing it back.
Oh, is that the one?
Overgrown.
Yeah.
Yeah, Overgrown.
Nice. Yeah, I like that song too. That's a great record.
Yeah.
So good.
Great record.
What's been your biggest success as a musician?
I guess like objectively, it would be performing at Grand Point North or doing UVM's Fall Fest. Like UVM's Fall Fest was surreal because that was like, there were a lot of people at Grand Point North maybe, but it was so open of a space and I was the opener. So it just felt kind of weird. It was like broad daylight, but performing at Fall Fest was just like surreal because it was like, it felt like a real legit concert. But maybe on a more like internal level, the greatest success has been, I don't know, I guess just becoming like, going from knowing nothing about music production to feeling pretty confident about it. And now I actually just started producing for other people. So I have three that I'm currently actually working with, but a couple potential clients that I'm producing for. And all of them are either, non-binary or femmes/women. So there's definitely like a need to work with producers who aren't men. So I feel like that's probably what I'm most excited about, is stepping into the role of offering my services professionally.
That's rad.
Great answer.
Yeah. Is that something you want to pursue further and to do lots of production, mastering, mixing, writing for people?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to make money. And I like doing it. And it's nice to produce things that aren't, it's confusing when you're producing your own stuff because it's not like I sit down and write a song and then I sit down and then I record it and then I mix it. It's like a jumbled thing of all of those three like at the same time, which is really confusing and overwhelming. So it's nice to just have someone send me their stuff and all I have to do is mix it and sometimes add, come up with an arrangement or add things to the arrangement. But it's nice to have like a degree of separation between myself and someone else's work.
Yeah, I love it. How has the pandemic negatively affected your music career?
I mean, I guess the obvious is just that it's put on pause, but like I said, like I'm getting checks from the government to just work on my art.
Yeah.
I can't complain. I really can't. Like I feel so insanely lucky. Like I'm just working. I'm also designing a tarot deck with my friend Sophia Hurwitz, who's a writer and witch, and she's writing the book that supplements it. So I've been learning a lot about tarot, and that's what I was doing today. I was working on a tarot card. So in like a surface level way, it's put everything on pause, but everything is going to come back, and it's not like anyone else is getting ahead of me. We're all on pause. So ultimately, I think it was a blessing, and it forced me to step away from Princess Nostalgia, which I think was actually also really healthy for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask how is it positively affected, but that you kind of touched on it right there, which is cool. Awesome. What's a time that you felt incorrectly judged as a performer?
I felt very misunderstood like freshman and sophomore year. And this was when I was really active on social media and just like going on angry tirades about the way I was, just like the types of interactions I was having with men in the music scene, and just constant underestimation, constant entitlement to collaborate with me without even proving themselves. Like people who I didn't even know would come up to me like, first of all, complimenting my music in a way where they were actually just complimenting themselves for having good taste and recognizing that I was good in a way where they were like, thinking that I was good maybe by accident or something. Like, And then offering to collaborate either by asking me to sing on one of their beats, and I'm not just a singer, so I don't want to do that, or offering to make a beat for me, and I don't want to do that either. So, but they would offer it to me in a way where they were acting like they were doing me a big favor and I should be so grateful. And then when I wasn't, it was like, then I would go and rant about it. And then I was always paranoid that people perceived me as being like a self-important, cocky bitch. And I had confirmation that people do think that, because people have talked about me behind my back. Other musicians have said things about me of like, oh, she, like, who does she think she is, type of thing. I had one guy, like, I was complaining on Instagram being like, you know, I'm fine with being the opener, but I had opened for bands, like just jam bands of college guys who had only performed basement shows after I did Grand Point North. I was still the opener. And so it was just like, nothing against them, but I was on Instagram like, why am I automatically always the opener? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm a single person act? I understand that it's partially because I'm a producer and like there's this thing of wanting a full band to be the final thing. But I was like, I'm just pointing out a bias, because producing and arranging all your own stuff is like a pretty big feat. And just because I don't have a full band doesn't mean I should always be the opener. And this guy who was like another producer in town who had done sound for me before, I ended up blocking him because he just started sending me this like stream of just verbally abusive messages being like, you know, there's a lot of things you don't understand about this industry, but you definitely do not have as much experience as all these other people. I'm like, well, maybe it's just because I'm better than you that I have had more but he was obviously salty that I was better, more successful than him, and he was implying that I'd only succeeded because I'm a woman and because of my appearance. Then when I put out a recent music video a while ago, he like DM'd me and was like, that must have cost a lot of money to make. Who did you pay? I was like, no one. So anyway, so I felt like he was very angry and cocky from how I was responding, and I felt like people didn't actually see this, like the softness that I have and the shyness that I have. There's a whole side of me that's introverted and sensitive, and there's also the side of me that's angry and righteously angry all the time, which I like that side of me, but I felt misunderstood because that was all that I was showing of myself online.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a lot of like uphill battle. The single person act, being a woman, like no wonder you're frustrated, you know?
Yeah, but I'm also sick of talking about it, because it's like in comedy, you know how women comedians hate the question, what's it like being a woman in comedy? You know, it's like I've kind of grown out of it, honestly. Like that was a phase I went through of being really angry, and like I still talk about it, but I feel like I've put up a lot of boundaries now, and I don't get as much bullshit anymore now that I've learned what my boundaries are. And I think that is my responsibility. I'm not just like going to view myself as a victim and be like, oh, like men are so mean to me. This sucks. Like, you know, it's not just men who suck. Entitlement is a thing, and it's more about me learning to draw boundaries is what I've learned. So
nice.
What do you suck at musically?
I feel like I'm not that good at mastering, and I shouldn't even be mastering my own stuff. I know other people, you're not really supposed to master your own stuff, and that's another thing I suck at, is like relinquishing control when it's probably the right thing to do. Yeah. And I hate recording vocals.
Why?
It's just the least fun part to me.
Really?
Why do you hate it?
I don't know. I feel like I should see a vocal coach, because like I have to get in the right headspace, and a lot of times I'm just impatient and I don't do the vocal exercises, and then I start straining, and I'm also just so OCD that I'll record the same line like 100 times before I like it. So it's just a headspace that I need to have better discipline about entering with more clarity, because if I don't, it just feels like torture.
Yeah. I love all your harmonies and how much you like stack vocals in certain spots. I think you do a really good job at that.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to sing, but something about laying down the vocals is like the most tedious part.
Yeah, especially like you said, when you're like trying to record the same phrase over and over, like there's no way that's going to be fun after a while. Yeah. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, I feel like vocals more than any other thing, you have to really have the vibe right. And it's like even more of like a mindset shift, or I feel like it more so than other instruments. Or maybe I'm saying that because I'm a vocalist, but that's not all I am. But I just feel like the setting and the vibe and your headspace is so important for vocals, probably more so than any other instrument.
Totally. Like, I feel like I should meditate and do breathing exercises every time before I do them, but I'm just not always. And it's hard to be in that space when you're like looking at a screen and hunched over. It's like you have to be in the right posture and all this stuff. And one song might mean that you have to be breathy and very close to the mic, and the other one you want to be loud. It's like you have to figure it out. And I've re-recorded vocals for songs like so many. I'm re-recording vocals now for a song I did like 3 years ago because they weren't right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it before. I am not a good singer, but I'm a willing singer. But my favorite thing is to have people sing on music that I've written. And I don't know if it's just been the luck of the draw, having Mark or Fran or Sam Dupont or, people in a sort of like a setting where they're coming to record the vocals for me at the studio or something like that. The luck of the draw so far, all you guys have fucking nailed it. But that's like a thing. That's like when, like, if I'm going to record trumpet parts on someone, I'm prepared, I'm in the mood, I'm going there, I'm burning it down, so sometimes when you're here holding the mic, you can do it a million times. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but a lot of the time that first or second take is the winner, regardless of if you do 100 or 200. Yeah. There's something about that original sort of vibe before you start psychoanalyzing everything that usually is kind of, whether it's feel or the approach or whatever, there's something about the first or second take that you'll always kind of come back to.
It's so true. Like, one of my favorite vocals that I've done is for an old song called Robert Says that I actually recorded when I was recovering from the flu, I think, and my voice was kind of, had been gone for days, and it was slightly coming back, and it was kind of raspy, and I just laid it down because I wanted to get it down, and it was so effortless. Like, I wasn't. Yeah. It's a lot of times when you don't think it's the take that you're gonna save, it's like the best one.
Right.
There's like less pressure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or innocence.
Mm-hmm.
What are you really good at musically?
I think coming up with arrangements comes intuitively to me, and like bass lines and just creating a groove. I think that comes pretty easily. Yeah.
Lily, Princess Nostalgia, thank you for taking the time. Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
I have like 6 songs that I'm bouncing back and forth in between, and who knows when they're going to come out. Nothing specific yet, and I should learn to be better at promoting things. But one thing, I'm doing a funky cover of Jolene that I'm really excited about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And everyone can check out Princess Nostalgia on all the major streaming platforms, and your website has a lot of really cool merch and art and all sorts of stuff like that. So.
Yes. And the merch, I'm thinking 20% is a reasonable amount. I'm thinking about like redistributing some of those funds. I posted about that on Instagram. If anyone buys my stuff, they can reach out to me and we can pick together on an organization, unless they just have bad taste, and then I'll decide probably. But